on your back and get comfortable. And discern for yourself if legs long or feet standing throughout the lesson, which one you alternate from or you don't need to. But it's really for you to feel at rest. And of course, pay attention to the contact you make and where you rest your hands, on you, on the floor. You're breathing. How we bring our hands to loved ones, especially when they're not well, or they're troubled, or little kittens, or dogs, or animals, or a little baby bird. How we use our hands. They're interconnected all the way through the center. And we're using our hands a lot with computers, phones, all of the digital work we do, typing, scrolling. So feel your hands. The amount of real estate in our brain that the hands possess, the hands, the mouth, your eyes, huge, huge in comparison to your feet or your legs or other portions of you. So notice the beginning, your hands, and feel the connection of your hands from your fingers, the pads of your fingers, through each of the fingers into the forehand. That's that portion where we call the long bones of each finger that comes into the hand. And then it connects into squarer bones that make the heel of the hand, into your wrist, your forearm, elbow, upper arm, into your shoulder joint, shoulder blade. If you're listening to the shoulder blade back on the floor, and the differences between the right shoulder blade, how it rests, and the left, can you also bring your attention to the front of your chest and the collarbone? What is it like as you start? And the disposition of your chest. And how your head rests. From your head all the way down through your spine, the little trail slowly, the curves. Base of your spine is housed in the pelvis. And then your legs. If the one thing that you can remember, like a puppet, everything's connected, a marionette. There are strings that move the puppet. The puppeteer will move the puppet, the marionette, by pulling the strings. Those strings are your muscles. They connect to the bones, and they move the bones of the skeleton under your command. Unless something just is tripped up and you can't stop it. Now, very slowly, bring your arms. I'll describe what you're going to do. You're going to bend your elbows so that your forearms are more in the vertical, and the palms of your hands will organize towards each other. So the forearms, the wrists, the hands are in the air. Now, if I said, the idea is, I want you to bring the pads of your fingers to touch each other. So you would have to lift your elbows, wouldn't you? And think, it's not the heel of your hand, it's just the pads of your finger, as if in between the the fingers, other than the first pads of the fingers, the opposite side of your fingernail. It's as if you were holding something very gentle, a little soft ball. And then you separate the pads of your fingers, and then you bring them back, listening. Am I touching each pad? The thumb, index, third, fourth finger, fifth finger. As I bring the hands towards each other, do each of the fingers touch their alternate pads at the same time or no? And then you separate, and you do that several times. Now, if any of you feel there's any discomfort in lifting your arms and drawing the hands towards each other for the pads to touch, the pads of each finger to touch, and they would touch, I guess, over your sternum, over your chest, and then you separate. If you feel, for whatever reason, you want to elevate your upper arms and your elbows on pillows, well, you can do that. So you just feel, does that make it easier for you in your chest, in your shoulders, in your neck? You have choice. And you go slow so that you can look, but you don't have to look. You can have your eyes closed, because in fact, maybe this is something that's going to help you just rest your eyes, rest your intention. And just discern, are they touching simultaneously, or which ones are touching simultaneously, and what other pads of your fingers lag behind a little bit? And when you do it, then you touch, and then you separate them, and feel the sensitivity of the pads of your fingers. For some, the thumb lags behind. For some, it's another finger that or they don't quite touch right on the pad. They slip off, or, oh, I didn't quite have my aim correct. Good. And then just rest. Put your arms back to rest. But you understand, in order for you to do this, you have to lift the rest of the arm. The elbow has to lift. Something, was it happening? Did you notice your shoulder blades, your collarbones, your breathing? When you were lifting the hands to bring them to touch, were you inhaling or exhaling? Now, again, I'm going to share, you may choose to use a pillow or not. But if I said you're going to start by bending your elbows, they're on the floor, you bring your forearms and hands in the vertical, you can let your wrists be soft, soften your hands, soften the digits, the joints of all your fingers to soften. But I'm going to say, keep your left elbow, your left hand stationary. Now you can lift the left arm, or you can keep the left elbow on the floor. But that hand is stationary. It's not static, but it's not the movable part like you were just doing when you brought both arms together. And now, slowly, start to take the right hand, the finger pads of your right hand, and move them over to connect with the pads of your left hand. That's it. Beautiful. That's it. And they touch, make the contact, and then come away. And notice what you're doing. Did you change the orientation of your right palm? Did you rotate the arm? Do you need to? Or can the left hand, something happen in the fingers that they open to receive the pads of the right fingers? Do you need to lift the right elbow, right arm a little higher to arc over your chest? And are your eyes following? Do they get curious? Or do you just fixate on the ceiling? Whether your eyes are open or closed, is there a curiosity as if your eyes were trailing what your right hand is doing? So it's only the right arm that's really shifting. Maybe something happens in your left hand to welcome the pads of the right hand. But make it the most delicate and gentle movement that you possibly can make. Notice when your elbow bends. Can your elbow soften? And feel deep within you what's happening in your shoulder blades, collarbones, sternum, chest, so that there is a welcoming, an accompanying throughout you that's receiving this. And then start to notice, am I getting a little bit more finesse in finding the pads of my right fingers to touch the left at the same time? Or no, there's some slippage, or I slide inside or outside the finger, or not everything's touch, or, oh, I was off someplace else. You can look. After all, I do want a surgeon's hands to be looking where their hands are going. Good. And you're going to feel for you the easiest position to hold your hands. You might even want to elevate the left arm in the air a little bit so that the right doesn't have to cross so far over to meet it. Was that an option you gave yourself? And then you lower your arms, you rest. Each time you come into this position, especially when one hand is going to be what I'll say relatively stationary. It's not the initiator, it's the receiver. Look to make it a little bit more comfortable every time. And that's the question. Can you figure out how for you to do this so it just keeps getting simpler and easier, maybe a little slower? And now the next time you're going to bring your arms into this configuration, the left hand arm is still going to be, I'll call stationary, but it can be the elbow resting on a pillow to elevate it. You can lift the arm a little bit in the air, but where it's willing to receive. And then this time, start to find the right thumb. Can the pad of the right thumb find the pad of the left thumb? And then when you find it, stay there and begin to make a little circle against your left pad of your thumb. And just make a gentle circle as if there was a little something there. You want to maybe feel your fingers. Are they calloused? What about your other fingers? Are they soft and sensitive? What was the direction that you started to circle the right thumb pad around the left and then reverse it? And feel within your whole right arm, shoulder, chest, a resonance of that. And do it delicately. It's a funny feeling you might have. Where do you sense the circle is a little uneven or more even in the circle? Or it's a little rough. Some of the tissue that you're feeling, oh, it's a little bit more callousy there. Oh, that's where I burnt my thumb. And you make the circle slow enough with an even rate, an even pace. And make sure that your palms are facing each other. And then here's another question. What if I said, what would you need to do if instead of reaching the right arm over to the left, both arms, like in the beginning that were over your chest, join over your chest, and then the left just stays quiet, and the right is the one that meets the left thumb pad with the right thumb pad, palms facing each other, describing the circle. Is that different? How high you reach your arms away from your chest, how close the arms are on your chest, that's for you to decide, because this is where you have to find for you. Each time it's a little bit more comfortable. And then you rest your arms. They've been there for a while. You just bring them back and you rest. And feel for yourself if one hand is resting a little differently than the other. One arm, one side. I ask the question, it doesn't mean that you sense it yet, or there's an awakening of it yet. But it piques the curiosity. Why would you ask that? Now you're going to come back. Again, it's the right hand that's going to be dominant doing the movement. The left is going to be passive. And if you can bring your hands, was it easier if you brought both hands over your chest and kept one quiet? And now this time, palms towards each other, find the right index finger pad and connect it to the left pad of the index finger. It's the last pad. That's what I'm talking about, the pad, the pillow. And just like you did with the thumb, begin to create small, delicate circles. The right index finger makes the circle. And you're beginning to move it against the pad, the tip of the left index finger in one direction. Which one did you start with? And then you change the direction. But here's a question. What's initiating the circle? Is it the finger? Is it in your wrist? Or is it in your arm? Can you feel how you're doing it? And if I said, make it the finger that initiates the circle, not the hand or the wrist, not the arm, just your finger, as if your index finger, right index finger, were spinning slowly around the dial of a clock. But it's a really teeny weeny wristwatch clock, because that dial of the clock is your left index finger pad. And see if you can make the circle with the finger, not the hand or the wrist or the arm, just the finger. And is it soft, slow? And you can change your arms, use the pillows, or rest whenever you need to rest. Are the pads of your hands or the palms facing each other as you do this? And then change the direction. Ooh, when you're making the circle with the pad of the index finger, are your knuckles bending? Or are they stiff, straight? You just rest, you come back and start again when you're ready. Because in order for that one finger to describe a circle, well, there are 3 knuckles. One at the first digit, that's the pad. Then the interphalangeal joint, it's called, that's the big knuckle we think of in the middle. And then there's the joint, the biggest knuckle that joins that digit, the phalange. These are the names of the bones, to the long bone of the index finger. and then you rest. The position you're going to have your arms in, you can feel some people want pillows, others don't need it. It's like, no, I know how to rest. But I always want to offer an option because we're learning how to better take care of ourselves. So if I were to say to somebody when you're working at your computer, is the desk the right height for you? Where your eyes look at the screen, where your forearms rest, your wrists when you're typing. And then you come back, you can go back to having all of the fingers meet over your chest. Are they connecting easier? The pads of the fingers, every time you try this, all 5 pads at the same time touch, and then they separate. They connect, and then they separate. And then the next time, keep the left hand relatively quiet. It's the stationary one, and connect the 3rd finger, the pad on the right finger, to the left 3rd finger pad. And the same thing. Begin in one direction to describe a circle. And then after you've made it, listen how smooth it is. Is it really a circle? Feel your fingerprint. They're little divots. And each one of our fingerprints is so different than anybody else's. One finger also from our next finger. Oh, is this the finger that feels a little calloused on that pad? You know, guitar players, string players, sometimes the pads of their fingers are really, they're calloused, especially if they play steel guitar. And then you reverse the circle, you rest as you need. You're going to continue this process to bring the 4th finger pad on the right hand to meet the left top pad of the left finger, and you're going to make the circle. But be sure it's the 4th finger, because why do they call the 4th finger the annular finger? Oh, that means for the ring, because it's the least used, unless you really are a diamond cutter, a musician, somebody who really has to use, a surgeon who really has to use their hands in such a way to be really efficient and dexterous. And you make the circle in one direction, and then you reverse it, going slow enough so that you can really, is it a circle? It's the circle around the pad of my left finger, but it's the right initiating. With each of these circles you've made, are you always initiating in the same direction with the right hand on the pad of the other? Does even the left hand, the fingers stiffen? And you rest as often as you need. You do need to rest because this is a lot of work you're doing, even though it doesn't seem like it is. Yeah, it is. And when you're ready, take your rest when you need. You go and you're going to do it with the pinky finger. It's the right pinky finger pad that meets the left and makes the circle. And the left finger is the stationary one, meaning it's not trying to join in on the circle. It's just resting there to receive the pinky finger pad of the right hand to do the circling. And notice, is it in the same direction, each of the other pads you circled, and then you reverse it, or does it change? And when you've completed these little circles, each finger, you can quickly, if you want, but not rushing, visit each one, the thumb, the index finger, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th, to discern similarities. Were some of them smoother? The circle was clearer, easier. And then you just let it all go. You rest. When you put your hands back down, you notice Does one arm, one side feel different? Or you're breathing on one side of your chest. The real saying, subtle and significant, is here. Yeah. Once again, bring your hands in that position, lift them, and just revisit again all 5 pads of your fingers coming towards each other, the left with the right, towards each other. Does one come easier? It's receiving, it's initiating easier than the other one. Which one is it? Which one is more soft? And is the simultaneousness of the touching, or it's sequential, getting simpler, clearer? That's it. Beautiful. And then you pause and rest again. Did something in that movement improve? Now we're going to go through the same approximations, but it's going to be the right hand that is stationary, quiet, receiving, and the left hand. So start with the thumb. The thumb only has 2 joints, not 3. It's a shorter finger than the other 4 fingers in our hands. It functions a little differently. Did you notice that when you were bringing the hands together, you wanted to do something to align the thumb with the other fingers? Did the longer fingers start to soften at the knuckles so that they could join and touch the pads? And then you use your own timing of the circling. Now it is the right thumb pad that goes to the left, describes a little circle in one direction, then reverses. Is it the same direction you started with? You can rest in between each finger, or you can just move to the index finger on the right hand that initiates, I'm sorry, it's the left hand now that is initiating the circling on the right hand. I'm sorry if I confused that. It is the right hand, the right arm that is stationary, meaning it's not the initiator of the movement, it's the receiver, but it's the left hand, the left thumb, the left index finger, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Whether you want to rest in between each, or you just continue to circle through, this is your play. But you're looking for light and your accuracy. And when you've made the circling of each pad of the left finger to the right, one direction and then the other, you've gone through all of those fingers in the order, discerning, were some fingers a little bit more dexterous, more malleable? And then you rest. But keep the pads of the fingers, keep the palms of the hands towards each other as if they're looking at each other. And then you rest. And notice your state of being, your contact, your breathing. Again, if you want to stand your feet, alternate that. You may do as you choose for your sense of ease and comfort. And when you're ready to start again, go back to the movement where you're bringing both of your arms towards each other, therefore both pads of the right hand, the left hand to touch. Can they touch simultaneous? Can the palms of your hands be towards each other? Can it be like a little arcing of your fingers so that the joints soften and bend? And you bring the fingertips towards each other and away and towards and away. Are you getting better at this approximation of knowing where you are in space? When you separate the hands, does one arm move further away than the other? All of these little things, really interesting. And then you pause and rest. And notice when you rest your hands, are they resting on you? Are they resting on the floor? Does there feel as if there's a little bit more sensitivity, not only in your fingers, so many sensory nerve endings you would not believe, but all the way through your hands, your arms, into your shoulders, your chest? Is it spreading? So now notice, because you'll probably use your hands to help. If I said, please roll by way of one side to come up and sit, please find a seated position for you that you're comfortable in. Whatever works for you, I just want you comfortable, and move into a seated position. You just have to make sure, if whatever position you're seated in, you do not need your hands to lean on the floor. And if you want to sit in a chair, you can sit in a chair. I even had one woman, she was kneeling. Fine, you got to decide. Now, bring your arms again. Sometimes people needed support. So far, you haven't needed any supports, really. So if you did, you would put it on your lap. But now bring your arms to look towards each other and begin to make the fingers, the pads touch. Bring them together. That's it. As if you were holding this precious thing and you're going to want to show somebody, look what I have here for you. And then you separate them. Listen to your breathing. You decide where you want your arms. Palms are soft, folded, a little concave as you bring them together and you separate them. Now, what's different? You're seated. Your relationship to gravity is different. But find how you can make both the pads of the left and the right thumb touch. Maybe the other ones are near, maybe they're touching, they're not. It doesn't clarify. But now both thumbs, the pads, start to have them circle each thumb pad, the right and the left, together. Are they circling in the same direction, in the opposite direction? But the right thumb pad and the left thumb pad are both describing a circle on the opposite pad. Yeah. And then you change the direction. Were both thumbs doing the direction exactly the same, or was one going opposite the other one? You just changed the direction of the thumbs. We're having the fingertips facing each other. It requires a special way of organizing our hands. Delicacy. And when you've done that, you can rest your hands whenever you want. You can change your seated position whenever you want. You're going to come back and touch the pads all together and apart and together and apart. Because you think when you bring them together and then apart, is it like they're drawing apart from each other? And then they're drawing together. Oh, like you were playing an accordion, maybe? I think of these things. You might not. Or if you were pulling taffy. Almost the beginning of a very delicate and gracious bringing your hands together to clap. But you're not going to clap. And then index fingers. Do the same thing with your index fingers. Make them connect. And both index finger pads, the finger, not the hand, not the arm, the finger is making the circle. Left and right pads are making the circle. Just notice how you do it. And then once you discern, and soft, easy, because you're discerning the quality of your fingerprint, then you reverse the circling, where each of the index fingers circling in opposition, but make sure the knuckles are soft. If the knuckles are straight, it's not the finger that's doing the circle, it's the hand, the wrist, in the arm. How could you differentiate? And then, again, rest when you need. You want to feel, is there friction of one finger moving against the other? And it's both fingers at the same time. And then you go, after you rest, you're going to do the third finger pads. The left and the right, they pull apart like, oh, that stretching taffy. And then they come back together. Yeah, if you prefer, no, I want to get on my back, you can. And then you play with the third pads of each finger. And it's the fingers making the circle, not the wrist, not the hand, the fingers. That's it. And then you reverse the circling. Get curious. What is the circling that each opposite finger, left and right, is making? Are they circling in opposition with each other? Are they circling in the same direction? But whichever they're doing, you reverse the direction. Please rest in between as you need. And then you have the fourth finger. So what's the difference in gravity? Seated in the vertical versus lying down. It is different, the muscles that you have to use, because gravity is 14 pounds per square inch that weigh on us. So you have options. And you're going to do this circling with each pad of each finger. We did it once, meeting together. We did it once where the left hand was stationary and the right reached over. Thumb, index finger, third, fourth, fifth of the pads. The right finger circling on the respective pad of the left finger. Same pattern of circling one direction, notice the direction, reversing it. And then we did it the opposite way, where it was the left hand that met the pads on the right finger and created the circling. And you get to rest when you need to, because don't you know when you need to rest? But you do every pad of the finger. And whether you have transitioned from sitting to your back, just notice when it was for you, I wanted to lie down again. And whenever it is that you have completed, so that every finger from each of the digits touches each of them circle, and then reverse the circle. Then you let it go, and you lie on your back and you rest. So we just were discerning how we were doing it. There are basic different ways. There's one way, which is it's actually the finger, which means that the knuckles of the fingers have to be articulating, that creates the circle. And then the other thing is that the fingers, the knuckles are sort of straight, and it's not really the finger that's moving. It's actually the hand or the wrist. And for others, it's sometimes in their arm, the shoulder that it's moving, but it's not the finger that's moving. Can you discern the difference of those three ways where the initiation of the circle happens? Now, just for a moment, we're going to play with something. It's a little different, but it's similar. So go ahead and interlace your hands. Lie on your back, you're resting, interlace your hands. And now, have you ever done this? Sitting in a car or anywhere, keep the four fingers interlaced. The thumbs are interlaced, but begin to turn the pads of your thumbs around each other, circling around. No, you're not inverting the hands. It's just the thumb. The pads of the thumb, left and right, are circling around the knuckle. Feel the pad of the finger and then reverse the circling. Have you ever done that in a car? Yeah. Some are going, no. Some are going, yeah, I've done that. Now go ahead and keep the fingers interlaced, but just put the pads of the thumb one against the other and do the circling that way. Make sure it's a real circle. Slow it down. That's it. Good. And then just rest from that. Okay. So why did I ask you about the interlacing of fingers? So once again, bring your arms into this position. Start to bring your fingers, the pads towards each other, soften the hands, palms are facing each other, but just as they're about to touch, allow the fingers to just ever so gently slide as if you were going to interlace your fingers. And notice which way they slid. Don't fully interlace the fingers. Begin. You want to see if all five sides of the pads of the fingers slide and make contact with the left hand, and the left hand makes contact with the right hand. Okay? And then keep the left hand stationary, arms stationary in the air or on the ground with a pillow underneath it. Bring the right hand, and slowly the right hand wants to begin to, the idea that it doesn't touch the pad, it starts and then it slides as if it's going to begin just to interlace, and then you come away from it, and then you go the non-habitual way, but all five fingers of the right hand are going to begin to do this gentle beginning of an interlacing, sliding on the side of the fingers, and then come away from it, and then do the opposite way you began to interlace. And begin to feel, oh, what about the sides of that one digit? Can you feel, oh, I might have a little callousing there, might be a little rough. And which way did you start to do it? The left is passive, it's not moving, it's not going to receive. It's the right that comes and finds this initiating of interlacing, to the right and then to the left. And the left is just receiving, the right is doing it. And then you can continue to slide down further the fingers so that you're going to the base of the fingers of your left hand, and then gently return to the fingertips of your left hand, and then go the non-habitual way, sliding further down the fingers to the webbing of the fingers, to the base of the finger, and just very delicately, as if you're beginning to interlace this way, but you don't clasp the fingers. What did the left hand have to do? Did it widen the fingers a little bit to receive the other fingers starting to interlace and slide down, and then they slide up, and then they slide in the non-habitual way, all 5 fingers? Or is the non-habitual not so simple? I have to do it sequential, not simultaneous. And then you pause and you rest. Just let it all go and rest. This can be done seated. This is on our back now. Is the back easier? Does it give you more information? What's going on in my shoulder blades, in my spine, in my chest? Am I stiffening there? Or is it also receiving the influence of the movement? And then go ahead, bring the fingers together again, then make the right hand the quiet one, and the left hand is going to begin to do this funny type of interlacing, but start from the very beginning of the first digit. Don't go all the way down to the base of the hands yet. Then bring it away, and then see if you can slide it the other non-habitual way, but just the beginning of it are all 5 fingers joining the other finger. And then once you start to find this smooth, soft, gracious way of doing, you can begin to let the left hand now exploring the right, sliding further down to what we would call the base of the fingers, or where we feel the webbing, and it slides out so you can feel the whole side of the fingers. Oh, how many times, if you've lubricated your hands, might you do this also? Gentle and easy. And then you can go ahead, and once you've done it, you can start to do both hands at the same time, but rest as you need, so that both hands are, each one of them, facilitating this pulling apart, as if you were pulling away taffy or yeast dough that you're starting to knead, and then you bring it back together, and then you interlace the habitual way, then pulling them apart. Both are now actively working. And then you pull them back together and you do the non-habitual way. Keep it as slow. Let both arms, is there a flowing movement through your arms, but it's the fingers that are creating the interlacing. And when you've done enough of that, you just totally rest. You just totally let it all go and rest. In one respect, I spoke about interlacing the fingers, but isn't it more that you're really feeling, touching the side of your fingers? Because I know for me, many others, you might have a little callus around that first digit on an index finger. Oh, is it more on your writing dominant hand than the other one? How you hold the pen or pencil? And then go back to the initial movement. Bring the arms into this position, bring them towards each other, and see if the touching of all of the 5 pads of the right hand, the left hand join together over you, and then come apart. And notice if now, do you have a feeling that your hands at times seem to disappear? Has your feeling of yourself or your organization started to change? Do your hands in this process start to feel bigger, and warmer? Is there a sense of a difference in the accuracy and the delicacy of your movement? Or is it an accuracy of the sense of your timing? Are more of your fingers finding themselves moving at a more even rate? And do they just barely touch them? Just enough to know that you made contact towards and away, towards and away. And then let it all go. Just rest for a moment. And feel it's not just your finger pads, your hands, your wrists, forearms, elbows, upper arms, shoulders, you. And now I'm going to ask a question. Listen to the quality. Listen as you slowly transition yourself from your back to roll to a side, to come to sit, and to come to stand. How you will use your hands delicately. And when you come up, you can stand, notice your verticality. You can walk around your room. Is there a feeling that it's a little bit more of a flowing movement? Is it just in your hands, or is it all the way through you? Making one connected movement. And then when you come up and you stand, and you're not using your arms, and the arms and the hands are just resting and hanging, feel the difference. And this was the lesson that Dr. Feldenkrais created for his eye surgeon after he had the surgery. And he realized, I want to give him a gift that he can use less tension. Any of you have dentists? This would be a great lesson for them. So enjoy the lesson, surgeon's hands.